Hi, everybody. Welcome. As we move forward, it's going to be a three-step process. We're going to first identify all the possibilities. Oftentimes, really, organizations just go with what they know, who they currently serve, um, what's common in the industry. But if you remember, even from my real life story, thinking outside the box here is going to be incredibly valuable and important. Utilizing all that assessment information and really being more strategic about what's happening in our market with our competition, what's happening with the market overall, the people that we've served in the past, the ones we haven't served, what's the potential out there, and then again strategically going after that. So first, identifying the possibilities. Second, we want to understand their needs and behaviors. We're going to do due diligence, and we're going back to secondary data or any primary data that might exist internally, and we're going to go find out what all do we know about this group of people. And if we don't have information, we've got to go get it. And if we decide not to get it, we take a bigger risk. And if we decide not to target groups of people, we take even bigger risk. So we have to start this process in our organizations and first within you. Finally, once we understand their needs and behaviors and all the possibilities, we want to finalize and select through brand positioning and then write an actual marketing objective, as I mentioned, moving in that. So I'm really going to break this kind of video into 3 sections to not make it incredibly long. And so let's talk about first how we're going to identify the possibilities. And then in the second video, I'll talk about understanding needs and behaviors a little, and then finally take you through a tactical process of how to finalize and select that and write that target market objective. So let's talk about identifying the possibilities first. Again, an exciting opportunity in our organizations to consider who we have served in the past and what our existing market segments look like, who we maybe reflect on who we've targeted in the past, where we put our investments in. You know, in this organizational assessment, you should have seen where all the marketing efforts have gone. You know, who on the website does it appear the organization's targeting? By what kind of pictures are they using, right? What kind of language are they using? Maybe there are tabs or links to certain groups of people like families, weddings, right? Click here, click here. Then you know and you can understand that there are certain groups of people already they're targeting and that those groups have particular needs and wants out of my organization, and as such I'm giving them some special attention because I've decided to target them in my business. But we should have seen in those tactical marketing examples, whether it was a press release or a coupon or an advertisement, that those tactics matched who those targets were. Now, in our perfect world, right, we'd have a marketing plan that clearly identified that we were going to increase the number of weddings from 10 to 20, you know, by this next year, and we went about that through these 10 actions this last year. Now, for half of our organizations, they don't have a formal marketing plan, so we wouldn't have seen that. But even within those half that do have a formal plan, did we really see and learn in those real organization plans that they had an identified target market objective and that they had these 10 tactics or 8 or 20 or whatever the number was, things that they were going to do to reach that objective? I think, again, even though we're writing marketing plans, we tend to be pretty vague and non-committal in terms of our commitment to an objective, to setting a goal, right? A number, a measurable means to understand where we're going and with how much emphasis then our actions need to take. You know, if I want to grow this business by 1% occupancy next year, well, shoot, I can do that today. I can charge everybody $1, do this great promotion, and I'm going to fill that no problem, right? But that's probably not the only issue. That's why we look at RevPAR and lodging, right? That's why we look at yield, and we're trying to grow both rate and occupancy, and it's that variable together that we would shoot for. So where am I going to grow that if that's one of my organizational objectives, is to make more revenue or more profitability next year? How am I going to increase RevPAR, right? Amongst what segments? Well, again, I have to know my patterns of business. Where do I have opportunities? And what markets might make sense to go after to do that? If your restaurant is sitting open, right, from 4 to 6 p.m., We have to say who might be available to even come between 4 and 6 p.m. So thinking of our business intelligence and our patterns of business, thinking about our competition and what they're doing, what we have, what we're good at, reflecting on that right now SWOT analysis that looks at us overall. Let's look at the possibilities in our organization for market segments to actually go after. So identification also reflects in a term, again, that I've used already called market segmentation. We're going to take this overall mass market, we're going to break it into like characteristics, but we haven't picked the ones we want to go after yet. We're just going to think about our business very directly. So divide it into common characteristics, and again, always reflecting that these people for my business make sense to split them apart because they are alike. Men and women are different as it comes to certain parts of our industry. Men and women aren't at all different in a whole bunch of other aspects of our industry in terms of their needs and wants. Let's talk about business travelers. A business traveler that's a man versus a business traveler that's a woman, are they really that different in terms of the needs they have? There might be some greater emphasis on things like safety and security, right? But that's a big issue for all travelers. It just might be a heightened issue for a female traveler. But in general, do they need the same things from us? The answer might be yes. And if that's the case, we don't break them apart by dividing that. Gender wouldn't be an issue, maybe in that example. So they're not always the same. Conversely, in a fitness center, if you're thinking about a fitness experience, if I'm writing a marketing plan for that, I'm going to think about men and women's needs as different. That a female's fitness needs, wants, desires are different than a man's on some level. So maybe it makes sense for me to take that mass market and use gender to break up the group. So always just remember here that we're looking for things that they have a common appeal in my business. There's nothing generic about this. That's one of the most challenging things about target marketing is it's not easy to say, okay, all of you tourism businesses, you can just use this market segment. There might be some similarities, but we really have to look at our market specifically, our organization specifically, our competition specifically, to even process this information. So one of the reasons you can't do target marketing in your organization is if you haven't gathered that data and insight. If you haven't done a competitive analysis, if you don't really understand your own internal data and information, it makes target marketing incredibly hard. So it's no wonder organizations have shied away from it, to be honest. But we're going to make them better than that, right? Be in this with me. Come on. So first we want to identify all of the potential segments that are out there that make sense for my business. And we want to do that for several reasons, as I've mentioned. First of all, we're going to be more effective with our use of our marketing dollars. And I say dollars like resources. You know, it could be my time. I'm going to be better use of my time when I'm really zoned in and focused on certain groups of people that we need to invest in this year to make something bigger happen for our organization so we can achieve our goals and objectives as an organization, right? Not just as a department, as a whole organization. So I'm going to spend my time more wisely. I'm going to invest any resource I might use more wisely, whether it's a partnership, a trade opportunity, or actual cash dollars. But I'm going to be a great steward of our resources, our time, our money, and our stuff, right? To make sure I've invested in that wisely. And that stuff, you know, might be, again, any logoed item. You know, it costs $10 each for a t-shirt to be printed with our logo on it. That's a $10 asset of my organization. I want to make sure I have used that in a wise fashion and targeted how I use my merchandise, how I use my brochure delivery, right? How I focus my investment on and having my website redesigned in a more effective way. It makes it all easier, and I'm a better steward of those resources when I understand that there are segments I'm targeting, and if I do so, I will produce a better return. Secondly, it's going to give me a much better understanding of groups' needs and wants because I have to use and find that information. And if I have that, then I use it to my advantage to meet their needs and wants better. Simple as that. And if I don't use it, then shame on me because I have lost all the benefits of segmentation. But now that I know what a female fitness consumer who's looking for when they're seeking to relieve stress and live longer, right, and have lower cholesterol and other issues related to their fitness goals. Now that I know that about them, then I can design programs and services and policies that better meet their needs. And when I do that and my competition does not, guess where they're going to come? They're going to want to come to me because I've done that for them. So I'm going to make very tactical, conscientious effort towards reaching a group of people that I want to serve, because I know our policies, our programs, our offerings, our staff, our volunteers, right? I know we can make a difference to that group of people, and we can do it better than everybody else. So kind of a rule of thumb here about if you're going to go into segmentation and target marketing, which I'm not writing a marketing plan without it. So if you're coming along with me, you're hopefully going to buy in. But if you're going to do that, you're going to own this market. You're not going to go into picking a target market that you want to dabble in, or you want to be just like everybody else. You're either going to own it or don't pick it. So I'll say that multiple times here, but firmly believe that, again, take full advantage of the idea that we take this mass market and segment it and then pick those segments to target, but then own that target market. And then finally, it's going to be one of the benefits is we're going to more effectively position our entire organization, and I can utilize marketing tools called positioning to figure out where we are in this market based on the needs of this market in particular, and then move us in a direction that'll produce a better outcome. And so we're going to do that by the end of this section today. So lots of benefits to it. The question is, how come everybody doesn't do it? And what are those limitations? I've alluded to a few already, but I want you to think about organizations you've worked for again or interned with, and how they even approach sending messages out to people. Who are they sending those to, if they're sending them? And aside from just the quality of service and word of mouth, how are they using their resources? And again, some of them may be doing some of these things now. But one limitation to segmentation is there's an expense associated with doing this. If you buy into the idea of doing it, then guess what? I need to understand currently who we're serving and how we break those down into from a big market into groups of people. Can we break them down by the reason they're here? They're here for business or pleasure. Can we break them down by they're with a group or they're a transient traveler, right? Can we break them down by gender? Can we break them down by age? Can we break them down by who they traveled with, right? Can we break them down for their purpose of their visit with us, and the time of day they came, and the day of week they came, and the month of year they came, right? I don't care if you're a restaurant, a festival, right? Another attraction, a lodging facility, a campground, again, we all can benefit, but there's an expense to doing so. So oftentimes I think organizations understand the concept, but one of the big limitations is they're not willing, they're too afraid, and it feels better to them to just do lots of things, trying to cast a big net to get everyone. The irony is that big net is too heavy and too broad, and it doesn't get to enough. If we take that net and zero in and shoot it out, and we're better at it than everybody else, and we're focused on their needs or wants, it's going to more than return when we do it correctly. But there's an expense. Realize that. Secondly, it's difficult to segment correctly. And in this chapter alone, you'll recognize there are several ways to go about, right, target marketing, to segment the overall market. It's not easy, and scientifically, getting that data to apply different techniques is costly. So recognizing many of our organizations are smaller in nature and don't have the luxury of significant amounts to invest, we're going to take a kind of a simplistic view of how to target market, more from a philosophy and utilizing secondary data to do the best we can, but recognize it is challenging, and the better data we have to break this market down by who do we currently serve broken down, as well as what's out there. What's all the demand look like, and what categories would we break that demand down? It is a challenge. It's not an easy process, because again, go back to, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. So It's difficult also to define that actual size of the market. So I may decide to invest in it. I may have the tools to do it, but I get to this point of the process and I'm not sure how many people we're talking about. So for example, I currently know at my YMCA that we're serving 100 senior citizens between 65 and 75 that live within 5 miles. Their membership data tells me that, right? I should be able to plot all my members and know exactly where they're coming from. If you remember weeks ago, 3 pieces of information I will never write a marketing plan without. And one is understanding as much as I can about our existing consumer. And right here is a perfect example. Because if I don't even know we have X amount of a segment of people, how do I know if going after more of them makes any sense whatsoever? So for example, if I know I have 100 seniors between 65 and 75 that live within this 5 miles, then can I figure out how many senior citizens there are between 65 and 75 within our 5 miles? If I have 100, but I use census data and some other tools to figure out how many are out there, now I can figure out if this might make some sense. Because if there's 110 in this whole area I live in and I have 100 already, it's going to be a completely change of a tactic. I'm going to talk about just maintaining those customers, right? And making sure I have an internal planned quality service plan to make sure I don't lose and my retention is really high, versus shooting my net out again with a whole bunch of messages to the senior market trying to get them. I'm not even going to have a return of that investment, and I'm going to think it might be the tools were bad. Well, the tools might not have been bad. Maybe I'm serving everybody that I can possibly get in that segment as is. So know that there is a challenge here, but we're going to walk through a simplistic view of how to, and more importantly, I want you to think about it differently and always think about it, because if I pick a bad market, right, to target, I've screwed this all up. And again, that's why I think organizations are very hesitant to venture into it, because there's a lot of fear. And then finally, and it relates to what I just said, it's selecting that market that's not viable. You know, I pick seniors, but I'm already serving as many as I can. Or I'm looking for, teenagers that have availability, to do an after-school program, where maybe I find out so many of those teens are already tied up with other things, and I'm picking a market that doesn't make a lot of sense for right after school, 16-year-olds trying to come to my fitness center or wherever. So again, I've got to be really careful in how I go about this process. And we know incredible benefits to it, but there are limitations and risks. And that's why I believe most organizations don't. But I'm never writing a marketing plan without targeting markets. And I'm not going to be vague. I'm going to be very specific. But if we do our homework, we feel incredibly confident. And again, our head should be going like this. As I think about a market I'm going after, by the end of this whole section, you should be going, oh yes, we're going after this, and this is going to be awesome. So as we move forward. So know that segmentation, I just bring a couple slides here quickly, that we segment things naturally in our industry. Here's an example of hotels, resorts, and casinos, by revenue. And it takes this pie chart and breaks it down, right, by bars and taverns, fast food, full service, etc. So the concept of food and beverage isn't all the same. We know that. It's broken down into segments. And so I bring this to you because we're used to segmenting our industry, and that's really the similar process. So here's U.S. pizza sales. Do you know over half of pizza companies are independent pizza places? I had no idea. It's interesting when we look at data again, because our guess may have been different than what is actual. So I'm in this section, again, going to rely on as much data as I can find to take the bias out of what I believe, right, and make it factual. I'm going to use data to sell why we're doing what we're doing, but most importantly, make sure I'm doing the right thing before I even have to tell others, or we work together, that it all makes sense to us why, and we feel really confident about this decision to move forward with this target market group. So we segment things naturally, even in lodging, right? We take different customers for different types of products. We didn't used to do that. You know, really, when I worked for Courtyard by Marriott, they were the first to really look at lodging very distinctly and said, we're going after the business traveler. And we want to know from the business traveler what they want. Great market researchers. I still love this, right? They did 10,000 surveys to business travelers and said, what do you want out of a hotel, right? They did pilot studies. We actually had, again, a semi-truck that we would walk visitors through and say, what do you think about this mocked up guest room? What do you like? What do you not like? And they would tell us, right? We piloted. We let people, there was one hotel built in Atlanta that was the test hotel. And they took a whole hotel and got feedback before they built all the other hotels nationwide. Heavily relied on data to build it. You know, build it and they will come. Well, that'll only happen if you built what they wanted. So when we ask them what we want, they tell us what to do, and it makes it easier. So no different than this class, right? I'm going to ask you what you think about this class and ways to improve. And if we meet the needs of the market, we hopefully will do something different than everybody else. Whole idea. So we're used to looking at, again, our market as not one thing in our industry. We're used to taking even businesses and breaking it down. This might represent overall, you know, demand, but Expedia and Kayak and Priceline, who's getting more of the business, right, kind of idea. So when we look to define our target market, I pull this article out because I love, if you look down here, this paragraph right here in particular, but it starts with the current state of the economy. Having a well-defined target market is more important than ever. See, it's not just me saying this. For years, no one can afford to target everyone. I love how they said that in 2 sentences. I wish I had that gift. Small businesses can effectively compete with large companies by targeting a niche, or 4 to 8 niches that they're going after to own. So we're talking about big companies as well as small independent operations need to apply the concept of target marketing. Many businesses say they target anyone interested in my services. You know, I go back to and say, you're serving anyone who's interested in your services, but you're not necessarily targeting. And what we mean here again is spending our resources, time, energy, money, going after groups of people to produce a return. Now, I have anybody walk into my public facility, I'm going to serve them with incredible service standards, right, as I would to anyone. I'm not going to have them walk in and go, hey, wait, you're not a senior citizen. I'm targeting senior citizens. I'm only going to take care of them. That's nonsense. So we're going to serve everyone. We're going to target with our resources because we're trying to produce a return for that effect. So remember that in that case. And then specifically, as I read in this article, targeting a specific market does not mean you have to exclude people that do not fit your criteria from buying from you. Rather, target marketing allows you to focus your marketing dollars and your brand message, which is what we're doing next. How easy is it to decide what kind of language I want to use when I know who I'm trying to talk to? And all of those people are very different, would want to hear from me differently because their wants and needs are different from me, right? So rather, target marketing allows you to focus your dollars, your brand message on specific market that is more likely to buy from you than other markets. It is much more affordable, efficient, and effective way to reach potential people. So this is nothing new. A gazillion hits when you Google target marketing. And the interesting thing is pretty much people are talking about it in the same way. What a target market is and how you're going to do it. The difference here for us are the variables we're going to think about and use are different because I like to think of our industry as incredibly special. Well, on some level, we're like any other organization in terms of target marketing, but we're not quite. So you could generically look at target marketing, but I want to introduce to you some ideas in this chapter that are about how our industry would look at variables a little differently.